Ladies and gentlemen, pay close attention because the silence that keeps you awake late at night carries a meaning far deeper than ordinary words could ever explain. There are moments when someone cannot express what they truly feel through direct sentences, yet they reveal it clearly through emotional contradictions, sudden distance, and repeated returns into your life. Thinkers like Carl Jung believed that we should not only listen to spoken language, but also observe the hidden emotional patterns moving underneath the surface in the unseen shadows of the mind. If you have been questioning why they step away and then come back again, appearing distant one moment and unexpectedly warm the next, listen very carefully now. The answer has not vanished. It has been concealed inside the mixed messages and conflicting behavior that continues leaving you searching for clarity. Your special person is struggling to communicate a complicated emotional truth in the only way they currently know how. Even if they never openly apologize, they are not nearly as calm as they appear, not as detached as they pretend to be, and definitely not as unaffected as they want others to believe. Something deep within them remains restless, unsettled, and emotionally awakened by this connection in a way they have not experienced for a very long time. When a person finds it difficult to face the truth directly, the truth begins escaping through hesitation, uncertainty, and emotional inconsistency. It reveals itself in their dreams during quiet nights, and in their hidden urge to check on your life from a distance. Keeping emotional space while never completely letting go. If this message about hidden emotional truths is speaking to you right now, hit like so others can discover it too. One of the deepest lessons from psychology teaches that while the conscious mind can become skilled at hiding things, the unconscious mind remains painfully honest. A person may insist they no longer care, while their repeated actions quietly reveal a completely different emotional reality. Someone might claim they have fully moved forward, while their thoughts continue circling back to you every night in silence. Do not focus only on the last short message they sent, because people often expose their real emotions through the feelings they cannot successfully release. Listen instead to the deeper instinct inside you that already understands this truth, because the answer has been standing in front of you the entire time. Someone may repeatedly say they do not miss you, but that does not mean the feeling itself has disappeared. Often it simply means they are fighting against it within themselves. That resistance becomes the first genuine sign that you matter more than they wish to admit. Because why would someone battle so strongly against something that meant absolutely nothing? Why would a person who truly felt indifferent continue explaining their absence, protecting emotional distance, or carefully proving they do not care? Human beings protect themselves most intensely from emotions that threaten their sense of control and awaken old fears that were never fully healed. When people are reminded of what they deeply desire and fear losing, they often withdraw, become quiet, and behave as if silence can restore power to them. Yet silence never removes emotions completely. It only buries them temporarily until they rise again later. And that is exactly why they are trying to communicate a hidden emotional message to you. You matter to me far more than I am emotionally prepared to admit right now. That realization feels extremely heavy for a proud spirit, and terrifying for a heart that has already experienced pain before. This inner truth causes them to behave in deeply conflicting ways. One side naturally wants to move closer, while another side immediately pulls away for self-protection. One part remembers the comfort, emotional safety, warmth, and rare connection they felt with you, while another remembers vulnerability, emotional exposure, and the frightening possibility of being truly seen without emotional walls. When those opposing sides collide inside a person, they become divided within themselves, no longer speaking with one clear emotional voice, but with two completely opposing voices battling inside their mind and heart. One voice urges them to return, reconnect, and finally speak honestly, while the other warns them to stay guarded, remain silent, and keep everything safely hidden away. This continuous internal conflict drains enormous emotional energy and leaves them exhausted, creating behavior that almost always appears confusing from the outside. But confusion does not necessarily mean a lack of feelings. Very often it comes from being emotionally overwhelmed by feelings they do not know how to process properly. Sometimes the person who creates the greatest confusion is actually the person who feels emotions most intensely while understanding them the least. Think carefully about that idea, because when someone cannot properly explain their emotions with words, they begin expressing them through inconsistent behavior instead. They move close and then suddenly retreat. They begin contact only to step away once the connection starts feeling emotionally real. They reveal just enough to keep the bond alive, while still avoiding complete openness. This pattern is not always cruelty or manipulation. Frequently, it is fear wearing a disguise, old emotional pain replaying itself, and a heart that never learned how to stand fully exposed without protection. Carl Jung understood that whatever we refuse to confront does not simply disappear. Instead, it grows stronger within the unconscious mind, influencing our decisions and repeating emotional cycles again and again. That is why they continue returning to you. The same unfinished emotions, the same emotional pull they cannot fully explain, and the same unresolved wound inside them keeps drawing them back. If this explanation is opening your eyes right now, comment Jung below to show you recognize these deeper emotional patterns. So when your special person suddenly distances themselves, do not immediately assume they have completely forgotten about you or the bond you shared. When they remain silent for long periods of time, do not instantly believe nothing is happening inside their mind and heart. When they appear emotionally distant, do not convince yourself their feelings have vanished, because very often the truth is the exact opposite of what appears on the surface. The more emotionally meaningful a connection becomes, the more frightening it can feel for someone who has not yet developed the inner strength required to face those emotions honestly. Some people walk away because they genuinely feel nothing, but many others leave because they feel far too much and become overwhelmed by the intensity of their own emotions. Some people end relationships because they are truly finished. Others leave because they remain emotionally unfinished within themselves. And individuals who feel incomplete internally often create relationships that also remain incomplete in painful ways. They send mixed signals because different parts of them are emotionally conflicted and uncertain. They give moments of deep presence, followed by periods of absence within the same connection. They make you feel uniquely valued one moment and suddenly forgotten the next. They make you feel deeply understood and then leave you questioning your worth shortly afterward, when the reality is that they are secretly questioning their own ability to love without losing control of themselves emotionally. Type resonate if you recognize this emotional push and pull within your own life right now. They may not completely understand how deeply they affected your heart and life, but they absolutely know that something meaningful inside them has also been touched and changed by you. That becomes the hidden message they are struggling to communicate through repeated actions. Not through polished explanations or perfectly chosen words, but through behavioral patterns that continue repeating themselves until the emotional truth beneath them becomes impossible to ignore. They crave closeness with you, yet that same closeness awakens fear within them at the exact same time. They want certainty, but certainty requires honesty with themselves first. They long for genuine emotional connection. Yet true connection demands surrender, openness, and vulnerability from them. They want to feel fully understood, but that also requires revealing hidden parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding even within their own awareness. So they remain trapped in a difficult emotional space between desire and self-protection, between powerful feelings and fear, and between what their heart deeply wants and what they believe they can safely handle. Inside this inner conflict, you become the question they cannot answer, the memory they cannot erase, and the emotion they cannot fully control, no matter how hard they attempt to suppress it. This is why your absence often affects them more deeply than your actual presence once did. Because distance creates room for emotions they can no longer distract themselves from with everyday routines and noise. If this part feels deeply familiar to you, hit like so more people can discover this message too. When you are no longer around, their unconscious mind finally gains enough silence to speak clearly, and the confident mask they spent so long building slowly begins to crack. They begin realizing they were never as emotionally protected as they pretended to be. And during those quiet moments, when nobody else is watching, they replay memories they tried hard to bury. They revisit conversations they acted indifferent toward. They think about the comfort of your presence, the safety they secretly felt around you, and the emotional intensity they still cannot fully explain. Even if pride stops them from admitting it openly, the emotional connection continues living inside them long after the distance begins. This is why people sometimes return unexpectedly after weeks or even months of silence. Not because everything suddenly became simple, but because emotions that remain unresolved continue demanding attention from the unconscious mind. The heart rarely forgets what deeply changed it. It only learns how to temporarily hide it beneath distractions, routines, and emotional defenses. But hidden emotions have a strange way of resurfacing when the world grows quiet again. And perhaps the most difficult part for you is that their actions often leave you confused, emotionally exhausted, and questioning your own worth. Yet their inconsistency is not always a reflection of your value. Sometimes it is a reflection of the internal war taking place inside them, a battle between fear and desire, attachment and protection, longing and resistance. People who fear emotional vulnerability often create distance not because they feel too little, but because they feel too much, and do not trust themselves with those emotions. They become terrified of dependence, terrified of rejection, terrified of losing control over the carefully protected identity they built to survive previous pain. So, instead of moving naturally toward what they feel, they hesitate, withdraw, and create confusion where honesty should exist. But emotional truth always leaves traces behind. It appears in delayed messages, sudden check-ins, unexplained reactions, lingering attention, and emotional energy that never fully disappears. It appears in the strange inability to completely move on, even when they insist they already have. Because the unconscious mind cannot easily release what the heart still experiences as meaningful. So if you have been sensing that there is more beneath their silence than they are willing to admit, you are probably noticing something very real. Not every distance means absence of feeling. Sometimes distance itself becomes proof of emotional intensity that a person does not yet know how to carry properly. And while you cannot force someone to confront their emotions before they are ready, you can begin understanding that their contradictions are often speaking louder than their words ever could. Their silence speaks. Their return speaks. Their hesitation speaks. Their inability to fully let go speaks louder than any explanation they could possibly offer. Because at the center of all this confusion exists one simple truth they are struggling to face. You reached a part of them they believed nobody could reach again. The unconscious mind does not communicate through loud announcements or dramatic declarations. It moves more like a quiet whisper, returning as a repeated thought, an unexpected rush of emotion, a heaviness in the chest, or a sudden urge to check on your life again. The deeper mind follows its own rhythm and timing, ignoring pride, surface confidence, and the demands of the ego, while asking one important question beneath everything else. What still remains unfinished between us and within me? In many relationships, what stays unresolved is not the absence of love itself, but the deep fear of what real love actually asks from a person. Genuine closeness requires honesty, maturity, responsibility, and the courage to be fully seen without protective masks. And for many people, that feels more frightening than losing the relationship entirely. They would rather manage their pain from a distance than face the tenderness and emotional exposure that real intimacy demands. They often prefer to leave the relationship in a gray and uncertain space rather than risk revealing the soft, wounded, and still healing parts of themselves openly to you. They move around the connection from the edges, coming close for a moment before stepping away again, reaching out and then retreating, trying to communicate something they do not yet have the emotional strength to say directly. Their actions become a silent confession that they are not completely in control of the feelings living inside them. And that truth frightens them more deeply than they can explain right now. They crave your closeness while fearing it at the same time, longing for true connection while running from the surrender and vulnerability it requires. Do not mistake their silence as proof of indifference, because repeated patterns often reveal a heart trapped in a powerful inner conflict, waiting for emotional truth to finally rise to the surface. Many people believe love must always appear loud, obvious, and perfect to be real. But sometimes love exists as a wounded, frightened, and developing energy struggling to survive inside someone who has never properly learned how to care for it. Love often expresses itself through hesitation, avoidance, distance, and stepping back. It can look exactly like someone who cannot completely stay away, yet also cannot fully allow themselves to come close. It hides within the repeated cycle of returning because the heart continues searching for a path back toward something the logical mind cannot fully explain or name. When your special person keeps returning through thoughts, dreams, emotional reminders, or sudden memories, it is often their deeper self revealing that the connection did not truly end where their surface mind wanted it to finish. Do not confuse periods of silence with complete emptiness, or moments of distance with total disappearance from their inner world. Do not mistake pride for genuine peace inside a person. Human beings can appear calm on the outside while carrying intense emotional storms within themselves. They can seem cold while wrestling with powerful emotions and painful inner contradictions. Perhaps your special person is not trying to tell you that they feel nothing at all, but rather that feeling this deeply has become their greatest challenge. Maybe your presence awakened something within them far deeper than they ever expected possible. They are showing you that you reached a guarded and protected place inside them, making it impossible for them to continue pretending they remain untouched and unaffected. Some people spend their entire lives building emotional walls around themselves, convincing themselves that remaining detached and guarded will keep them safe from disappointment, heartbreak, and pain. Yet life has a strange way of testing the walls we build around our hearts. When a meaningful connection forms, those old defenses begin to crack. Suddenly they feel too much, desire too deeply, and fear too intensely, all at once. Once their familiar emotional protection starts collapsing, their entire inner world feels unstable, which explains why they often behave inconsistently toward you. They are not always playing shallow games the way it may appear on the surface. What looks like a game is often emotional survival, a person struggling to manage the strength of their own reactions and feelings. They become trapped between the safety of isolation and the powerful pull of your connection, communicating their conflict through every mixed signal they send. Beneath all the confusion, their ongoing struggle quietly proves that you still hold a meaningful place within their heart and mind. Sometimes they simply do not know how to be emotionally honest without feeling dangerously exposed. They do not know how to stay close without fearing the loss of their identity. They do not know how to love someone deeply without reopening old emotional wounds they worked hard to bury.